Welcome to Science to Sleep By, where we explore the wonders of the universe in a way that relaxes the mind, calms the body, and gently carries you toward rest. Tonight, we turn our gaze to something both familiar and mysterious: the moon. That soft silver lantern that has guided travelers, poets, and dreamers through the night sky for thousands of years. But beyond its beauty, the moon quietly performs a task of cosmic precision. It moves the waters of our Earth, it shapes the tides, and it does so in a rhythm so steady, so graceful, that it feels almost like a lullaby written in the language of gravity. Imagine looking up at the night sky on a quiet evening in America. Perhaps you're standing somewhere along the coastline of Maine, where the Atlantic stretches endlessly before you. Or maybe you are on the shores of California, listening to the Pacific roll in under a blanket of stars. No matter where you are, whether it's the sandy beaches of Florida or the rocky coves of Oregon, one sight unites us all: the moon glowing softly, suspended in darkness, its light reflected gently onto the earth. It looks silent, still, almost motionless. Yet, this celestial neighbor is constantly in motion, engaged in a delicate, eternal dance with our planet. This dance is not loud, not forceful, but dramatic like storms or earthquakes. It is quiet, gentle, so gentle in fact that most of the time we don't even notice it. And yet, it moves the very waters of our world. The relationship between the Earth and the moon is one of subtle balance. The moon orbits our planet at a distance of about 238,855 miles. If you were to imagine driving from New York to Los Angeles, over and over again, it would take about 100 trips to equal the distance to the moon. That seems far, yet in the scale of space, it is astonishingly close. Close enough that its presence reaches us not only with light, but with invisible force. That invisible force is gravity, the unseen thread that binds the two bodies together in a cosmic embrace. Gravity is the quiet sculptor of the universe. It pulls galaxies into shape. It keeps planets locked around the sun. And here on Earth, it allows oceans to rise and fall under the influence of the moon. When you think about the moon, imagine not just a glowing sphere in the sky, but a partner, constantly tugging on the Earth as they circle one another. This tug is gentle. It is not enough to rip mountains from the ground or shake the Earth's crust apart. Instead, it works in harmony with the natural rhythm of our spinning planet, creating a graceful movement of the seas. The tides are the visible evidence of this connection. Picture the Earth not as a solid mass of land and sea, but as a living body, clothed in a thin but vast layer of water. That water is never completely still. It is restless, stirred by winds, by currents, by storms. But beneath all those surface motions lies a deeper rhythm, a rhythm written not by weather, but by the steady pull of the moon. Every day, as the moon circles the Earth, its gravity reaches across space and gently stretches our oceans. The water swells outward, forming what scientists call tidal bulges. These bulges are always aligned with the moon, one on the side of the Earth closest to it, and one on the opposite side. As the Earth rotates beneath these bulges, coastlines across the globe experience the rising and falling of the sea that we call tides. The beauty of this is not just in the science, but in the poetry of the relationship. The moon is not just orbiting, it is guiding, shaping, and influencing our planet in ways that we feel, even if we are not conscious of it. When you stand at the edge of the ocean and feel the tide slowly creeping higher on your feet, you are experiencing a moment of cosmic connection. That movement of water is not random. It is not just the ocean itself deciding to move. It is the Earth responding to the moon. For thousands of years, humans have been fascinated by this dance. Ancient cultures looked at the tides and knew they were tied to the moon. Sailors timed their journeys by the rising and falling waters. Fishermen counted on the tides to bring in their catch. Farmers believed that planting and harvesting could be guided by the cycles of the moon. Even today, in modern cities and towns across the United States, the tide charts are studied and trusted. Surfers on the beaches of Hawaii, shrimpers in Louisiana, lobster fishermen in Maine all rely on this ancient rhythm to guide their work. But what is remarkable is how constant and dependable this dance is. The moon has been circling the Earth for billions of years. In fact, scientists believe the moon was born from the Earth itself, when a massive collision with another celestial body long ago sent a spray of molten rock into space that eventually coalesced into the glowing orb we see today. Ever since, the moon has been locked in step with us, orbiting faithfully, guiding the tides in their timeless cycles. When we think of tides, we often imagine waves crashing onto the shore. But the tide is not the same as a wave. A wave is a short, energetic disturbance caused by winds or storms that passes quickly. The tide is slower, more patient, more encompassing. It is the rising and falling of entire oceans, the shifting of vast amounts of water, guided by the moon's pull. It is the largest, most powerful movement of water on Earth. Yet it happens so gently that you can stand at the shoreline and hardly notice until you return hours later and realize the sea has quietly crept in or out. To grasp this, it helps to think of the Earth and moon as dancers in a cosmic ballroom. The Earth spins on its axis, twirling once every 24 hours, while the moon circles it in about 27 days. As they move together, the moon's gravity pulls on the Earth's oceans, always keeping them in motion. Imagine a dancer's hand lightly pulling on the arm of their partner, guiding them, shaping their movement, not forcing them, but leading them with grace. This is how the moon moves the tides, not with violence, but with elegance. And yet, this gentle dance is powerful. The tides influence not only the water, but life itself. Entire ecosystems are shaped around the rhythm of the tide. On American coastlines, tide pools form and vanish, sheltering tiny crabs, starfish, and sea anemones. Birds wait for the tides to retreat before swooping in to feed on what is left behind. People, too, have built their lives around it. From Boston Harbor to San Francisco Bay, ports and harbors rely on the predictability of tides for safe navigation. Bridges, docks, and lighthouses are constructed with tides in mind. Even recreational live fishing, boating, surfing is connected to this ancient rhythm. At its heart, the story of the tides is the story of balance. The moon and Earth are locked in a partnership, bound by gravity, each influencing the other. The Earth's rotation slows ever so slightly as it gives energy to the moon, causing the moon to drift gradually farther away over time. The moon, in return, keeps the Earth's oceans in motion, ensuring that this dance continues. It is a relationship measured not in years, not even in centuries, but in billions of years. A cosmic partnership that has lasted longer than human history, longer than the existence of most species, and one that will continue long after we are gone. When you lie down tonight and close your eyes, you may not hear the sound of the tide unless you live near the ocean. But whether you are in the deserts of Arizona, the mountains of Colorado, or the plains of Kansas, the moon is still above you, still pulling on the oceans, still guiding the tides in their timeless dance. It is always there, always moving, always reminding us of the quiet power that shapes our world. Gravity, a word we all know, and yet, one that feels mysterious, almost magical. It is a force we cannot see, cannot hold in our hands, yet it governs everything around us. From the way a ball falls to the ground when tossed in the air, to the way planets revolve around the sun, gravity is always at work. It is the silent thread weaving the universe together. When we think about how the moon moves the tides, we must first think about this invisible connection, the gravity that binds Earth and moon in a timeless embrace. For many of us in the United States, the word gravity first comes to mind during childhood. Perhaps we remember dropping a toy and watching it fall, or standing on a swing and noticing how the pull of the Earth always brought us back down. In school, we may have learned the story of Isaac Newton, sitting beneath an apple tree, watching a piece of fruit tumble to the ground. Whether or not the story is literal, the idea is true. Gravity was recognized as a constant force, one that acts everywhere, all the time. Gravity works on everything that has mass. The Earth pulls us downward, the Sun pulls the planets into orbit, and the Moon, small though it is compared to Earth, also exerts a pull of its own. The oceans, vast and fluid, are especially responsive to that pull. And so, while gravity is everywhere, it is the interaction between the Earth, the Moon, and the oceans that gives us tides. To understand this invisible connection, imagine for a moment that gravity is like a hand stretched out across the void of space. It doesn't push, it doesn't grab in a violent way. Instead, it reaches gently in embrace, drawing objects toward one another. The Moon extends its hand toward the Earth, and the Earth extends its hand toward the Moon. Both are pulling, both are bound. This connection is not something you can see when you look at the night sky. The Moon looks serene, almost untouchable, but in reality, it is engaged in a constant conversation with Earth. It pulls on us, and we pull on it, endlessly. The ocean, in particular, responds to this call. Water is fluid, always moving, never fixed. When the Moon's gravity tugs on the Earth, it pulls most strongly on the side of the planet that is closest to it. The oceans on that side swell outward, creating what we call a tidal bulge. But something fascinating also happens on the opposite side of the Earth. The water there, too, bulges outward, though for a different reason. As the Earth and Moon tug on each other, the planet itself is pulled slightly toward the Moon, leaving the oceans on the far side to lag behind. That lagging creates a second bulge, and so, there are always two tidal bulges, one facing the Moon, and one on the far side. As the Earth rotates, these bulges move across the surface, and we experience the rise and fall of tides. The power of gravity may seem small in this case after all. The Moon is so much smaller than Earth, but what matters is not just size, but closeness. The Sun is enormously larger than the Moon, yet it is much farther away. Its gravitational pull on Earth is less direct in creating tides. The Moon, being so close, has a stronger effect on the oceans. It is like the difference between a distant orchestra and a nearby violin. The orchestra may be grander, louder, more powerful, but the violin song is closer, more immediate, and in the case of tides, more influential. Gravity is not only a scientific principle, it is also a poetic image of connection. Think of the coastlines of America, the rocky cliffs of Maine, the golden sands of California, the barrier islands of the Carolinas, the broad shores of Texas. Each stretch of water is linked invisibly to the Moon above. The same force that keeps the Moon in orbit is the force that draws water onto the shore. In New York Harbor, as ferries carry passengers across the water, the tides rise and fall under the pull of the Moon. In the quiet marshlands of Georgia, the water seeps into estuaries, rising and sinking with the same rhythm. From Alaska to Florida, from Washington to Hawaii, the invisible thread of gravity connects every shoreline to the sky. But this invisible connection does not end at the edges of the oceans. It extends to every part of life. Fish that spawn in tidal waters rely on the timing of the tides. Birds that hunt on the shore wait for the tide to recede before finding food. Humans, too, plan around this pull. Bridges are built tall enough to allow ships to pass at high tide. Harbors are dredged with tidal flow in mind. The entire economy of coastal cities, ports, fishing, tourism depends on understanding this invisible connection. It is a quiet force, but one with enormous impact. When you think of gravity, it can be comforting to imagine it as a universal hug. The Earth hugs us close, keeping our feet on the ground. The Moon hugs the oceans, drawing them into a rhythm. The Sun hugs the Earth, keeping us in orbit. Without this unseen network of embraces, the universe would fall apart into chaos. Instead, it holds together, stable, steady, graceful. This stability is what allows life to flourish. And yet, even though we understand gravity scientifically, there is still something mysterious about it. We can describe how it works, we can measure its strength, we can predict its effects, but the essence of it remains hidden. What is gravity, truly? Is it a bending of space and time, as Albert Einstein suggested? Is it a fundamental property of matter? We know it works, but its ultimate nature is still one of the great questions of physics. In that way, gravity is like the Moon itself, familiar and constant, yet endlessly mysterious. For the purpose of the tides, though, we can think of gravity simply as a tether. The moon is tethered to the earth, and the earth to the moon. Neither can escape the other. They are locked together in an invisible bond, a slow waltz across the heavens. The oceans, like the trailing gown of a dancer, sweep and sway in response, rising and falling in elegant arcs. It is not a violent tug of war, but a balanced, harmonious exchange of force. This invisible connection also extends to time. The tides follow a daily cycle, but not perfectly aligned with our 24-hour clock. Instead, the cycle runs on what is called a tidal day, about 24 hours and 50 minutes. That extra 50 minutes comes from the moon itself, as it moves slightly in its orbit each day, requiring the Earth to rotate a little longer for the same alignment to occur again. So the rhythm of tides is not just Earth's rhythm, and not just the moon's, but the shared rhythm of both together. It is another way in which gravity links the two bodies, keeping them in step across time. If you were to sit on a quiet beach in America, perhaps along the outer banks of North Carolina, and watch the water slowly rise up the sand, you would be witnessing this invisible connection in action. The waves may be noisy, the gulls may cry above, but the true rhythm is silent, patient, written in gravity's hand. Hours later, when the water slips back, exposing shells and seaweed on the shore, it is the same force at work, the moon's gravity continuing its pull. This endless ebb and flow has been happening long before humans first walked the earth, and it will continue long after. It is humbling in a way to realize that something so vast, so powerful, is guided by something we cannot see. Gravity does not announce itself. It does not roar or flash. It whispers. It works quietly, invisibly, reliably, and in that quietness lies its beauty. It is a reminder that not all power is loud. Some of the greatest forces in the universe are the gentlest ones, working unseen, yet shaping the world. If you close your eyes and listen carefully to the ocean, you might think it has a heartbeat. The waves lap at the shore in steady breaths, in and out, like the inhaling and exhaling of a sleeping giant. Yet beneath the rhythm of waves is a deeper, slower, grander rhythm, one not made by the wind or the storms, but by the moon. This rhythm is the tide, the daily rising and falling of the sea. It is nature's clock, older than any watch, steadier than any calendar, and it has guided life on Earth for countless generations. The tides are not random. They are not chaotic. They follow a cycle as dependable as the turning of day into night. Along America's long and varied coastlines, whether the rocky inlets of Maine, the sweeping beaches of Florida, the marshlands of Louisiana, or the rugged cliffs of California, the sea obeys this rhythm. Twice each day, the water rises. Twice each day, the water falls. And always, the timing is guided by the pull of the moon. Scientists call this pattern a semi-diurnal tide, meaning there are two high tides and two low tides roughly every 24 hours. Yet the rhythm is not perfectly aligned with our 24-hour clock. Instead, the cycle is stretched to about 24 hours and 50 minutes. This is because the moon itself is moving as it circles Earth. Each day, the moon shifts slightly in the sky, and so the Earth must turn a little longer to bring the same point beneath it again. The result is that high tide arrives about 50 minutes later each day. This is why fishermen, surfers, and sailors often consult tide charts rather than relying on the clock. The tides have their own time, set not by humans, but by the universe. Imagine standing at the shore in the morning and watching the water touch your feet. If you return to that same spot the next morning, you may find the tide has shifted. It might arrive nearly an hour later. This steady drift is the moon's signature, etched into the ocean's rhythm. It is as though the sea and the moon are keeping their own time, a quiet partnership that ignores human schedules and simply follows the laws of nature. Throughout history, people have lived by this rhythm. Coastal communities have always paid attention to the tides, because they shape daily life. In New England, fishermen time their departure with the outgoing tide, so their boats are carried swiftly to sea. In Alaska, where the tides are among the highest in the world, the difference between high and low water can be dramatic, exposing wide stretches of seafloor before rushing back in again. In the Gulf of Mexico, tides tend to be gentler, more subtle, yet still vital for the life of the marshlands. From one coast to another, from one state to another, the daily rhythm of tides connects us to the moon above. This rhythm is more than just a pattern of water, it is a foundation for life. Many animals, especially those that live along the shore, depend on the timing of the tides. In tide pools, starfish, mussels, and crabs live in small pockets of water left behind when the sea retreats. Birds gather on the exposed sandflats to feed when the water is low. In turn, when the tide rises again, fish move closer to shore, feeding in the shallows. For centuries, Native American tribes along the Pacific Northwest built fish traps that worked with the tides, allowing them to catch salmon and other species as the water moved in and out. The tide is not simply a background event, it is the heartbeat of ecosystems, the clock by which countless creatures live their lives, and humans too find comfort in this daily rhythm. Surfers in California wait for the right tide to bring in waves at their favorite breaks. Families in Florida plan their beach walks around low tide, when the sand is wide and full of shells. On the East Coast, sailors know that entering a harbor at high tide is safer, when the water is deep enough to guide their boats. Even the sound of the tide itself, the slow whoosh of water rising, the gentle hiss of waves pulling back, has a calming effect on the mind. It is no wonder that many Americans choose to live near the ocean, drawn not only by the view, but by the soothing constancy of the tide. The beauty of the tide is that it is both predictable and endlessly varied. No 2 days are exactly the same, yet the pattern always repeats. Sometimes the tides are especially high, called spring tides, when the sun and moon align to pull together. At other times, the tides are gentler, called neap tides, when the sun and moon are at right angles, working against each other's pull. But no matter the variation, the daily rhythm remains. The water rises, the water falls, the moon pulls, and the earth responds. In many ways, the tide is like a lullaby sung by the universe. Its rise and fall mark the passing of time in a way that feels almost musical. Just as our bodies follow natural rhythms, our heartbeat, our breath, our sleep cycles, the earth itself seems to breathe with the tides. For those who live by the sea, this rhythm becomes part of daily life, a steady background to everything else. And even for those far from the coast, the tides still shape the world indirectly, influencing weather, currents, and the balance of the oceans. It can be soothing to think of the tides as a reminder of constancy in a world that often feels busy and unpredictable. No matter how rushed our lives become, no matter how many demands fill our days, the tide continues its rhythm, unchanged, unhurried. The moon does not rush the sea does not rush the moon. Together, they move in harmony, following a schedule that has lasted for billions of years. This daily rhythm also shows us something profound about the connection between earth and sky. When we look at the moon, we are not simply seeing a distant rock in space. We are seeing the conductor of a vast orchestra, directing the movement of oceans, shaping coastlines, guiding life itself. Each high tide and low tide is a visible reminder that the earth is not isolated, but part of a larger cosmic dance. On the shores of America, this becomes especially clear. Walk along the beaches of Cape Cod and you will see the tide carve deep channels into the sand. Visit the Chesapeake Bay, and you will notice how entire communities of crabs and oysters depend on the water's rise and fall. Travel to the Pacific coast, and you will find tide pools teeming with color and life, tiny universes created by the retreat of the sea. Everywhere the tide moves, it leaves behind a story. Stories of survival, of adaptation, beauty. Stories written not in words, but in the rhythm of water. The daily rhythm of tides is not just a cycle of nature, it is a reminder of connection. It connects us to our past, when ancient peoples first watched the ocean and realized the link to the moon. It connects us to our present, as coastal towns and modern cities continue to rely on tide charts and predictions. And it connects us to our future, for the tides will still be moving long after we are gone, still keeping time with the moon. So when you think of the tide, think of it not just as water rising and falling. Think of it as a heartbeat, a pulse that never stops, a daily reminder that the earth is alive, moving in harmony with the moon above. The tide is the breath of the planet, the soft music of the cosmos, a rhythm that has shaped our world since the beginning of time and will continue. For as long as the moon circles the earth, when you look up at the night sky, you might notice that the moon is never quite in the same place twice. One evening it may hover low over the horizon, casting a silver path across the ocean. Another evening it may sit high overhead, glowing like a lantern suspended above the world. Its shape changes too, sometimes a thin crescent, sometimes a perfect circle, sometimes hidden entirely in darkness. The position of the moon in the sky, its ever-shifting face and location, is not just a matter of beauty for poets and dreamers. It is also one of the most important factors in how the tides rise and fall across the earth. The ocean listens not only to the moon's pull, but to where the moon is in its journey across the heavens. The moon orbits Earth once every 27 days, or so, and as it does, its position in the sky changes slowly from night to night. But because the Earth is spinning, the moon's location also shifts hour by hour. In the United States, you might see the moon rising in the east in the early evening, glowing low above the horizon. Hours later, it will appear higher, tracing a steady arc across the sky, until eventually it sets in the west. This movement is the moon's daily journey, and it shapes the timing of the tides. Wherever the moon is located, the oceans feel its pull most strongly beneath it. The bulges of water that create high tides follow the moon as it makes its slow, steady path. Imagine for a moment that the earth is a great spinning ball draped in a flowing garment of water. As the moon moves overhead, it tugs gently on the fabric, pulling it outward. Wherever the moon goes, the fabric shifts and follows. The tide, then, is not simply a matter of the moon existing in the sky, but of where it is at a particular moment. When the moon is directly overhead at a certain location, the ocean swells toward it. 6 hours later, when the moon has shifted in its position, the tide has changed too. The ocean, in a sense, is always bowing to the moon's presence, acknowledging its position with a rise and a fall. This becomes especially clear when we consider the moon's phases. In the United States, millions of people watch the changing face of the moon each month, whether it is a glowing full moon rising over the deserts of Arizona or a delicate crescent over the cornfields of Iowa. These phases are more than a show of light and shadow. They reflect the moon's position relative to the earth and the sun. And as the moon's position changes, so does the strength of the tides. When the moon is new or full, it is aligned with the sun in such a way that their gravitational forces work together. The sun pulls, the moon pulls, and the ocean feels a double tug. These are the times of spring tides, when the highs are higher and the lows are lower. If you were to stand on a beach in Massachusetts during a full moon, you would see the water surge higher onto the sand than during other times of the month. A week later, when the moon is at its first or third quarter, the sun and moon are at right angles, pulling the oceans in different directions. The result is neap tides, gentler and less dramatic, with less difference between high and low water. These cycles repeat month after month, a direct response to where the moon is positioned in the sky. But even beyond phases, the moon's daily path across the sky matters. In places like New York Harbor, the timing of the tide depends on the exact moment the moon is overhead or on the opposite side of the earth. In coastal towns, tide charts are printed not just with times of sunrise and sunset, but with times of moonrise and moonset, because the moon's journey is inseparable from the rhythm of the sea. The fisherman in Alaska waiting for the tide to come in knows instinctively to look at the moon. The surfer in California glancing at the horizon understands that the moon's position will decide whether the waves are rideable. And then there is something even subtler. The moon does not follow the same path every day. Because of the tilt of Earth's axis and the tilt of the moon's orbit, the moon rises and sets at different times and at different heights in the sky. Some nights it soars high, casting long shadows. Other nights it skims low, painting the horizon in soft silver. These changes affect when and how tides occur. The ocean is sensitive to these shifts, adjusting its rhythm in harmony with the moon's path. To those who live by the sea, this connection is unmistakable. They learn to read the sky, to see the moon not just as a source of light, but as a signal for the sea's next movement. Across American coastlines, this awareness has been passed down through generations. Native peoples of the Pacific Northwest studied the moon's position to understand when salmon would swim upstream. Sailors, leaving Boston Harbor, watched the moon carefully, knowing that its place in the sky determined whether the tide would help or hinder their journey. Even today, modern harbors from Seattle to Miami rely on the moon's position for safe navigation. Tidal predictions, made possible by centuries of observation and calculation, are printed in almanacs and digital charts, reminding us that the moon's place in the heavens is written directly into the daily life of humanity. Yet the moon's position is more than a practical guide. It is also a source of wonder. Think of the full moon rising above the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, or the crescent moon hanging low over the Everglades in Florida. In those moments, the beauty we see in the sky is mirrored in the sea. The tides are quietly adjusting, responding to the moon's presence. It is as if the earth and the moon are in constant conversation, their dialogue written not in words, but in water and light. There is something deeply comforting about this connection. We may not always notice it, but the moon's place in the sky is a steady influence on our world. Whether we live near the coast or far inland, the tides it shapes affect our weather, our climate, and even our sense of time. Farmers in the Midwest may not see the tide, but the moon they see above their fields is the same moon guiding the oceans thousands of miles away. Travelers camping in the Rockies may not hear the waves, but the position of the moon above their mountain peaks is linked to the ebb and flow of the Atlantic and Pacific. The moon's position in the sky is a reminder that our world is not isolated, not separate. Every shift of the moon, every rise and fall, every angle it makes with the sun, ripples through the earth itself. The oceans breathe in rhythm with the moon. Coastlines reshape themselves in response. Animals time their lives to its pull. Humans build their calendars, their traditions, their myths, and their science around it. The position of the moon is more than just a point of light overhead. It is a guide, a metronome, a presence that connects sky to sea, sea to land, and land to life itself. When we think about the tides, we often imagine the moon as the primary conductor, pulling gently on the oceans and guiding their rise and fall. But the moon does not perform this ballet alone. The earth itself is spinning, turning once every 24 hours, and this constant rotation plays just as important a role in the daily rhythm of the tides. If the moon is the partner who pulls, then Earth's rotation is the partner who spins, keeping the dance in motion. Together, they create the beautiful, predictable choreography of the oceans that has shaped life on our planet for billions of years. The Earth spins from west to east, completing one full turn in the course of a day. We feel this motion not as movement, but as the steady alternation of day and night, sunrise, noon, sunset, midnight. These are the markers of our planet's constant rotation. But beneath this familiar rhythm is another, quieter effect. As the Earth spins, different parts of its surface move beneath the moon's gravitational pull. The great bulges of ocean water created by the moon's tug are not fixed in place. They are like shadows, always aligned with the moon, and as the Earth rotates, coastlines move into and out of these bulges. This is what causes high tide and low tide to occur in different places at different times across the globe. Imagine the Earth covered in a thin layer of water, like a blue cloak wrapped around a spinning globe. Now picture the moon pulling at that cloak, stretching it outward slightly in the direction of its gravity. Wherever the cloak is pulled, a bulge forms. As the Earth turns, the continents and coastlines pass through these bulges. To a person standing at the shore, it feels as though the ocean itself is rising and falling. But in truth, it is the Earth, moving, rotating beneath the gravitational pattern that remains steady with the moon. This perspective changes the way we think about tides. They are not just the ocean moving up and down, but the Earth itself spinning into and out of the moon's embrace. Every high tide you witness is a reminder of the Earth's rotation, as much as it is a reminder of the moon's pull. Every low tide is a sign that your corner of the planet has turned away, moving out of line with the great bulge of water. Across the United States, this becomes visible in countless ways. In the harbors of New England, the timing of high tide depends on when that region of Earth rotates beneath the moon's gravitational alignment. In the wide estuaries of the Chesapeake Bay, the slow turning of the Earth carries the water inland and back out again. On the West Coast, where the Pacific stretches endlessly toward the horizon, the rhythm of tides is felt in the rise and fall of beaches, cliffs, and rocky tide pools, all moving in sync with the planet's steady rotation. Even in places like the Gulf of Mexico, where tides are often more subtle, the same forces are at work, linking the spin of the Earth to the gentle swelling of the sea. The rotation of the Earth also explains why there are 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day in most places. As the Earth spins, any given location will pass beneath both bulges of water, the one directly facing the moon, the one on the opposite side. This means that every coastal community, from San Diego to Savannah, from Seattle to Boston, experiences the rhythm of 2 highs and 2 lows in the course of a day. The pattern is so regular that it becomes like breathing. The sea inhales, the sea exhales, twice every day, in step with the spinning of the Earth. But the rotation of Earth is not only about timing, it also adds complexity. The continents, the depth of the ocean floor, the shape of bays and inlets, all these features interact with the rotation of the Earth to create variations in tides. In some places, like the Bay of Fundy just north of Maine, the shape of the coastline amplifies the effect, leading to some of the highest tides in the world, rising and falling more than 40 feet. In other places, like along the Gulf Coast, the geography softens the effect, producing tides that may only change by a foot or less. Yet in all of these cases, the underlying dance is the same. The Earth turns, the moon pulls, and the ocean follows. Rotation also creates an interesting effect known as the Coriolis force, a result of the Earth's spin. This force influences the direction of ocean currents, causing them to curve rather than flow in straight lines. While not directly responsible for the rise and fall of tides, the Coriolis effect works together with tides to shape the movement of water across the globe. It contributes to the swirling patterns of currents, the mixing of warm and cold waters, and the distribution of nutrients that sustain marine life. It is another reminder that the Earth's rotation is not a passive backdrop, but an active partner in shaping the oceans. For people living by the sea, the role of Earth's rotation may not be obvious, but it is always present. When a fisherman in Maine checks a tide chart, when a surfer in Hawaii waits for the right break, when a shipping company in Los Angeles schedules the arrival of a cargo vessel, they are all depending on the precise timing of tides set by the Earth's spin. The moon may be the face we see in the sky, the visible reminder of tides, but it is the Earth's steady turning that ensures those tides arrive in rhythm, day after day, century after century. There is also something deeply grounding about this idea. The Earth spins beneath our feet, and we rarely notice. We live our days as if the ground were perfectly still, when in fact, we are moving at hundreds of miles per hour as the planet rotates. The tides are one of the few visible signs of this hidden motion. They reveal the truth of our spinning world, showing us that even the solid ground is part of a greater dance. When you stand on the shore and watch the tide come in, you are watching the Earth turn. When you see the tide slip back out, you are witnessing the continuation of that turn, a reminder that our planet is never at rest. This partnership between Earth's rotation and the moon's gravity is not just mechanical. It has shaped the very history of life. Billions of years ago, when the Earth spun faster, the days were shorter, and the tides were even stronger. Over time, the interaction between the Earth and the moon has gradually slowed our planet's spin, lengthening the day to the 24 hours we now know. At the same time, the moon has been drifting farther away, inch by inch. As a result of this, exchange of energy. It is a cosmic relationship written into the fabric of time itself, one that links the tides we see today to the ancient past of our world. In the quiet of night, when you lie down and drift toward sleep, it can be soothing to remember that you are part of this dance. The ground beneath you is turning, slowly, steadily, carrying you beneath the stars. The oceans are rising and falling in response, pulled by the moon, guided by the earth's spin. The rhythm is vast, too vast to notice moment by moment, yet always present. It is the background music of the planet, the steady tempo that keeps life in harmony. Whether you are in a coastal city watching the waves, or deep in the heartland far from the sea, you are part of this turning world, part of the dance that connects the earth, the moon, and the ocean in an endless cycle of motion. When we think of tides, the moon often takes center stage. Its steady pull, its glowing presence in the night sky, its quiet partnership with Earth, all of this seems to place the moon as the lead in the choreography of the seas. But there is another partner in this dance, one so vast, so powerful, that it almost seems too grand to notice the details of our world. And yet it does. The sun, that blazing sphere of fire and light, also reaches across 93 million miles of space to shape the oceans on Earth. Though it shines far more brightly than the moon and exerts far greater gravity overall, its role in the tides is subtler, a steady hand that enhances and softens the rhythm depending on where it stands in relation to the moon and Earth. The sun's gravity pulls on Earth just as the moon's does. If we could pause the motion of everything and look only at the sun's effect, we would see bulges in the ocean similar to those created by the moon. But because the sun is so far away, its tidal effect is less noticeable than the moon's. Even though the sun's mass dwarfs the moon's beyond imagination, it is a reminder that distance plays as important a role as size in the workings of gravity. The moon may be small compared to the sun, but it is close, so close that its influence on the tide surpasses the sun's. Still, the sun cannot be ignored. Its presence joins the moon's to create moments of harmony and moments of contrast. Moments when the tides rise higher than ever, and moments when they are gentler and more subdued. These moments are known as spring tides and neap tides. Despite the name, spring tides have nothing to do with the season of spring. The word spring here means to leap up, to rise strongly. Spring tides occur when the sun, the moon, and Earth line up in a straight line, whether during a full moon or a new moon. In these alignments, the gravitational pulls of the sun and the moon combine, pulling together on Earth's oceans in the same general direction. The result is a tide that is stronger, higher, more pronounced. Coastal communities can see water levels rise more dramatically, and the difference between high tide and low tide becomes more extreme. For sailors, fishers, and beachgoers, these tides are both an opportunity and a challenge. They demonstrate, in a way that can be measured on every shore, the combined effect of two celestial bodies working in unison. At other times, when the moon is at its first or third quarter phase, the sun and moon are at right angles in the sky, pulling the oceans in different directions. This produces what we call neap tides. These tides are softer, gentler, less extreme. The difference between high tide and low tide shrinks, and the ocean's pulse becomes quieter. Neap tides are not as dramatic as spring tides, but they are just as important in the rhythm of the seas. They show us that even in opposition, in moments of misalignment, the forces of the cosmos still weave together to create balance. In the United States, you can see the effects of spring and neap tides in many places. On the East Coast, in harbors like New York and Boston, spring tides bring especially high waters, sometimes spilling over seawalls or flooding low-lying streets. In California, the higher spring tides, known colloquially as king tides, create a spectacle along the coast, with waves reaching farther up beaches and into marshlands. Scientists study these events carefully, using them as previews of what rising sea levels may look like in decades to come. Along the Gulf of Mexico, where the tidal range is typically small, the difference between neap and spring tides may be more subtle, but it can still be seen in the shifting waterlines of bays and estuaries, in the patterns of fish, and in the breathing of wetlands. Everywhere the ocean touches the land, the sun's role in the tides becomes visible, if you know when to look. The sun's contribution to tides is not only a matter of height and depth, but also of timing. Because Earth is constantly rotating, and the moon is constantly orbiting, the alignment of sun, moon, and Earth changes day by day. This creates a shifting pattern, a dance of intervals, so that spring tides and neap tides occur in cycles of about 2 weeks. It is as if the universe itself breathes in 2 rhythms layered together, one controlled by the daily rotation of Earth, the other shaped by the alignment of sun and moon. Together, these rhythms keep the seas in motion, keep the coastlines alive with change, and keep humanity connected to the cosmos in a way that is steady and profound. There is something deeply calming about this harmony. The sun, so enormous that it could fit more than 1,000,000 Earths inside it, does not simply overwhelm our planet with its power. Instead, it joins the moon in a kind of partnership, letting its gravity speak softly across the void of space. It could dominate, but it does not. Instead, its influence blends with that of the moon to create the push and pull of the tides, a reminder that even the mightiest star can act with subtlety. Consider, too, the way this interplay has influenced human culture. For thousands of years, coastal peoples have noticed the stronger and weaker tides that correspond with the phases of the moon. Fishermen timed their journeys with spring tides, knowing that the waters would run deeper and the fish would move differently. Farmers near tidal rivers noted how neap tides gave them calmer waters, more predictable for irrigation or transport. In Native American traditions along the Pacific Northwest, the moon and the sun together were seen as great forces of nature, guiding the cycles of life in balance. Even today, modern science relies on understanding these cycles for navigation, shipping, and climate research. The tides are not just water moving in and out, they are a clock, a calendar, a natural rhythm guided by both the moon and the sun. And while the moon captures our imagination as the glowing companion of the night, the sun's role reminds us that the forces that shape our lives are often interconnected in ways we might overlook. The very star that gives us warmth and light by day also helps determine how far the waters rise at night. The very body that sustains life with energy also stirs the oceans, moving nutrients, shaping coastlines, and influencing ecosystems. Its hand is everywhere, even in the gentle lapping of waves on a beach at dusk. When you listen to the ocean, you are hearing not only the voice of the moon, but also the whisper of the sun. The two together create a harmony that is timeless, a duet played out across the fabric of space and time. The moon may sing the melody, close and intimate, but the sun provides the harmony, deep and powerful, resonating from afar. Together, they remind us that the universe is not just a place of solitary forces, but of connections, relationships, and balance. As you rest, think of how remarkable it is that tides on the shores of Florida or California or Maine are being influenced not just by the nearby moon, but also by the distant sun. Two celestial bodies, millions of miles apart from each other, are shaping the very same waves that touch your toes at the beach. They are guiding the same tides that fishermen rely on, that scientists study, that children play in. Their partnership is one of the most elegant examples of cosmic cooperation, a reminder that the heavens above are always at work in the life of Earth. When you look at the tides, it may be easy to think of them as just water moving in and out, a simple rise and fall of the ocean against the shore. But the truth is far more intricate, far more connected. The tides are not only the moon's pull, or the Earth's steady spin, or the sun's helping hand, they are the sum of all these forces working together. They are a living expression of balance, a reminder that our world is not a place of random chaos, but of harmony. A planet in harmony, guided by gravity, shaped by cycles, and tuned to rhythms that connect the land, the sea, and the sky. Harmony is not the absence of movement. It is movement guided into patterns, into something predictable, something beautiful. When you imagine the oceans breathing in and out, you are imagining harmony on a planetary scale. The tides are the evidence of that breathing, a pulse that has continued for billions of years, long before people measured them, long before people built their lives around their schedule. Every wave that breaks on a shoreline, every estuary that fills with salt water and empties again, every mangrove that soaks in the tide before it drains, all of it is part of the same harmony. Life itself has grown out of this balance. In the earliest days of Earth, when the oceans were still wild and young, the tides created pools that would fill and empty, places where chemical reactions had time to form, where simple molecules could combine in the presence of changing conditions. Scientists believe these tidal pools may have been the very cradle of life, the first nurseries where the ingredients of biology found the rhythm they needed to become more than just chemistry. The rise and fall of the waters, the balance between wet and dry, created opportunities for life to spark. Even now, billions of years later, life along the coasts reflects this ancient truth. Walk along any beach, and you will see the evidence. There are crabs that scuttle between rocks, hiding when the tide goes out, re-emerging when the tide comes in. There are barnacles that cling to stones, their shells closing tight against the air, waiting patiently until the ocean returns. There are fish that swim in estuaries on high tides, feeding in the shallow waters, then retreating as the tide slips away. Sea turtles, guided by instincts older than memory, crawl up beaches at high tide to lay their eggs, choosing the moment when the water is closest to the dunes. The tides do not simply move the water, they move life. They provide a schedule, a rhythm, a structure for ecosystems to flourish. In the United States, these rhythms are deeply woven into daily life along the coasts. In the tidal flats of Maine, clammers rise early to dig in the mud exposed by low tide, their livelihoods tied directly to the ocean's breathing. Along the Pacific Northwest, salmon swim upriver, their migrations influenced by tidal currents that guide them to spawning grounds. In Florida, manatees drift in warm coastal waters, grazing on seagrass beds that grow lush with the nutrients delivered by the turning tide. Even in the sprawling marshes of Louisiana, the tides shape the wetlands, nourishing the grasses that shelter birds, fish, and countless other forms of life. Each region, each ecosystem, has found its harmony with the tides, adapting and thriving in the rhythm set by the moon, the sun, and the earth. But harmony is not only in the realm of biology, it touches human culture as well. For thousands of years, communities have built their lives around the tides. Indigenous peoples along the Pacific coast designed fishing techniques that worked with the ebb and flow of the water, building weirs that trapped fish as the tide retreated. In the Atlantic colonies, tide mills were constructed, harnessing the energy of rising and falling water to grind grain, a renewable source of power long before electricity. Even today, scientists and engineers are exploring tidal energy as a source of clean, sustainable power, seeing in the harmony of the tides a solution for the future. The tides are not just a backdrop, they are a partner, woven into the very fabric of human survival. This harmony also teaches us something about balance on a greater scale. The tides are not created by one force alone. The moon's pull, the sun's influence, the earth's spin, all of them combine. If any one of these factors were missing, the pattern would not be the same. If the earth stopped spinning, tides would collapse into stillness. If the moon drifted too far, the oceans would lose their familiar rhythm. If the sun's influence vanished, the balance between spring tides and neap tides would disappear. It is the cooperation of all these forces that creates the tides as we know them. Harmony arises not from one voice, but from many, working together. And so, when you stand on the edge of the sea and watch the waves, you are seeing harmony written into motion. You are seeing the moon's gravity, invisible but undeniable, tugging at the ocean. You are seeing the sun's gravity, blending its influence into the rhythm. You are seeing the earth's rotation, turning the stage on which the performance unfolds. And you are seeing the ocean itself, vast and alive, responding with grace. The sight of water rising against rocks, of gulls circling above the foam, of sand darkening as the tide creeps higher, it is all part of the same balance, the same planetary song. There is something profoundly peaceful in this awareness. In A world that often feels busy, uncertain, and fragmented. The tides remind us that harmony is always present, always available. The oceans do not rush, they do not resist. They simply move in accordance with the forces around them. They rise. When pulled, they fall. When released, they flow with steady grace. In this, there is a lesson for us, a quiet teaching written in water, to find balance, to listen to rhythms larger than ourselves, to accept change not as disruption, but as part of a cycle. The harmony of tides even shapes the land itself. Over centuries and millennia, the rise and fall of water wears away rocks, carves cliffs, and creates beaches. Sediment is carried from rivers into the sea, then deposited back on shores, reshaping coastlines with every tide. Wetlands expand and contract, estuaries deepen and shallow, sandbars shift, all because the tides, guided by cosmic forces, are always at work. The earth is sculpted by this harmony, its face forever changing, yet always balanced by the same timeless rhythm. To lie down at night and think of the tides is to think of balance on a scale larger than imagination. As you rest, somewhere the tide is rising, flooding into marshes, filling harbors, reaching up toward cliffs. Somewhere else, the tide is falling, exposing tidal pools, uncovering stretches of beach, leaving shells and seaweed glistening in the moonlight. At any moment, on every shore, the tides are moving, connected to one another, connected to the pull of celestial bodies high above. The harmony is unbroken, a continuous song that circles the planet, touching every coastline, every beach, every bay. Planet in harmony is not a still planet, not a silent planet, but one alive with rhythm. Earth is such a planet. It breathes through the tides. It sings through the motion of its seas. And we, whether we live by the coast or far inland, are part of that harmony. We are carried in the same rotation, influenced by the same moon, warmed by the same sun. The tides are not only the story of the oceans, they are our story too, a reminder that we live within a system of balance, a network of forces that sustains us, cradles us, and connects us to the cosmos in ways deeper than we can see. For as long as human beings have lifted their eyes to the night sky, the moon has been there, a constant presence in a changing world. Civilizations have risen and fallen, landscapes have shifted, cultures have blossomed and faded, yet the moon has remained steady in its glow, patient in its cycle. It has been a clock, a compass, a companion, and for the oceans of Earth, it has been a guide. The tides are not just a product of gravity, they are a reflection of the moon's eternal companionship with our planet. To call the moon a timeless guide is not only poetic, but profoundly true. The moon has guided life since the earliest ages. Billions of years ago, when Earth spun much faster, days were only a handful of hours long. The moon, locked in its gravitational relationship with Earth, pulled at the seas with a strength greater than we see today. The tides then were massive, sweeping, reshaping coastlines with relentless force. Over time, as the moon's pull transferred energy from Earth's rotation, the days lengthened, the tides softened, and the relationship found balance. Even now, the moon drifts slowly away from Earth, just an inch or so each year, yet its influence endures. It is a guide not just for the present, but for the unfolding history of the planet itself. For countless generations, humans have looked to the moon as a marker of time. Its phases, waxing and waning, have been calendars in the sky. Farmers planted crops by its light and harvested by its cycles. Fishermen cast their nets guided by the tides, knowing that the moon's position would determine the waters. Along the coasts of what is now the United States, from the Native American tribes of the Atlantic to the Pacific Northwest peoples, the moon was revered as a force of life, a regulator of patterns, a symbol of renewal. Even before written language, the moon's rhythm was understood, its guidance shaping culture, ritual, and survival. The tides are the most visible proof of that guidance. Twice a day, in nearly every part of the world, the ocean rises and falls with the moon's pull. To stand on a beach and watch the water creep higher is to watch the moon at work. To walk along the sand at low tide, when shells and seaweed lie glistening in the air, is to see the moment when the earth has rotated away from the moon's strongest tug. The moon directs this cycle with silent authority, never failing or pausing, always in motion. It is a guide not in words, but in gravity, a guide that leads not individuals, but an entire planet. And yet, the moon's guidance is not limited to the sea. Its presence has shaped our imagination, our science, and our sense of place in the universe. Poets have written verses to its light, lovers have walked beneath its glow, children have fallen asleep gazing at its pale circle through bedroom windows. Astronomers have charted its phases, navigators have used it to steer across oceans, and scientists have studied its orbit to understand the laws of gravity that govern not only Earth, but the cosmos itself. The moon is both a familiar friend and a cosmic teacher, reminding us that guidance can be quiet, steady, and constant. In the United States, the moon's role as a guide has taken on even more meaning in modern times. The Apollo missions of the 1960s and 72nd carried astronauts to the moon's surface, making it the first celestial body visited by humankind. Millions watched on television as Neil Armstrong stepped down onto the dusty surface, guided by centuries of curiosity, science, and wonder. That moment was not only about exploration, it was about connection. The tides that had always whispered of the moon's presence had, at last, been answered by human footsteps. The same moon that pulls on our oceans had welcomed us onto its surface, closing a loop of guidance that had lasted since the dawn of time. The moon's guidance is also ecological. Many creatures live by its light and its pull. Sea turtles crawl ashore to nest during high tides influenced by the full moon. Coral reefs spawn in synchronization with lunar cycles, releasing clouds of life into the water, ensuring survival through unity with the moon's rhythm. Migrating birds, moving along coasts at night, navigate by moonlight, steering by a compass older than maps. The moon guides not only tides, but the behaviors of living beings, shaping ecosystems in ways subtle and profound. Even inland, far from the sea, the moon's influence can be felt. Farmers in the Midwest once looked to the almanac's lunar calendar to know when to sow their fields. In the deserts of the Southwest, indigenous peoples track the phases of the moon as part of their cultural traditions, weaving stories of its meaning and power. In the mountains of the Rockies, campers and hikers still notice how the moon transforms a night landscape, turning darkness into a silver-lit world. Its guidance is universal, reaching not only the coasts but the heart of the continent, connecting every person beneath its glow. The moon as a timeless guide is also a reminder of perspective. While we live our lives in days and weeks, in months and years, the moon's cycles are larger, deeper, older. It has circled Earth billions of times, each cycle repeating, each tide following, each generation looking up to the same light. To recognize the moon's role is to feel time in a different way, to sense not just the hours of the day, but the ages of history. It teaches patience, reminding us that guidance can be measured not in moments, but in epochs. At night, when you lie down and drift toward sleep, the moon is still there, somewhere above the horizon, shining its light across oceans, pulling at the tides, whispering to the waters of the earth. It does not rest. It does not forget. Its pull is steady, unbroken, reliable. That constancy has comforted humanity for millennia, and it comforts still. To know that the tides will rise and fall tomorrow, as they did today, is to know that we live in a world guided by forces larger than ourselves, forces that are steady and dependable. The moon is not just a distant object in the sky, it is a companion in the truest sense, shaping the life of our planet, reminding us of our place in the cosmos. The tides remind us daily of the moon's presence, but they also remind us of the moon's wisdom. A guide does not force, it leads. A guide does not demand, it influences. The moon does not push the oceans, it pulls gently, steadily, allowing the seas to follow naturally. It does not overpower, but it shapes. In this, the moon offers a model for harmony, for balance, for quiet leadership. To move others not through domination, but through subtle influence, through constancy, through presence. That is the way of the moon. Every coastline, every bay, every estuary is a page in the moon's book of guidance. The waterlines drawn in sand, the marks left on rocks, the salt marshes that breathe with the tide, all are signatures of the moon's influence. When you stand at the edge of the sea, you are reading the story of the moon written in water. When you hear the surf roll in and retreat, you are hearing the moon's voice, low and steady, echoing across time. To listen is to connect, to feel that you are part of a story larger than yourself. A story that stretches from the beginning of life to this very night. We have drifted together through the quiet story of the tides, guided by the moon, steadied by the earth's rotation, and touched by the gentle hand of the sun. From the moon's first pull on the oceans, to the invisible threads of gravity that bind our planet to the heavens, to the daily rhythm of rising and falling waters, we have seen how each force plays its part in a cosmic dance. The earth spins, carrying its continents through the ocean's bulges. The sun joins the rhythm, deepening the highs and softening the lows. And through it all, the tides breathe in and out, shaping life, shaping coastlines, shaping the very balance of our world. This harmony is not separate from us, it is part of us. The same tides that cradle crabs in tidal pools and carry ships into harbors have also guided cultures, inspired calendars, and offered comfort in their constancy. They remind us that Earth is not chaotic, but connected, not isolated, but in relationship with the cosmos. To watch the tides is to see a planet in balance, a world in conversation with the moon and the sun, a place where life and motion intertwine. And always, there is the moon, that timeless guide, steady in its orbit, patient in its pull, drawing the oceans and our imaginations alike. For billions of years, it has whispered to the seas. For thousands of years, it has spoken to humanity, a reminder that we are part of something larger, something steady, something eternal. To lie beneath its glow is to know that you are not alone. The tides move because of the moon, and so do we. In rhythm with the forces of the universe, carried gently by their harmony.